the workforce, as many of you know, I was an event planner for a women's organization, and I was fortunate enough to learn from like a real trailblazer. She was an amazing woman, but one of the things she always told me was that she had to knock down all the doors to get to where she was, which I get. It was a long time ago. But she didn't really feel she had to hold open any doors for me, or actually any of the young women at our women's organization. Her mentality was really, I had to knock down doors, now so do you. And I, for one, am so incredibly grateful that I'm not of that mentality. I have a lot of young women who work for me that I hope see me as a mentor, and I don't want them to knock down doors. I don't want my daughter to knock down doors, or my daughter-in-laws for that matter. I want women to support women. I want us to hold open the doors for each other. Which brings me to today and the panel that I want to have today, because we all know that breaking into the hospitality industry isn't easy, and there are few female chefs, there are even fewer female restaurant owners, especially since I just had one on the show just a couple minutes ago, and C-suite leaders. Like, we are just, women do not have those roles the way we should, but change is happening, and with me today are women who are helping lead that change. I've got Lori Gardner. She is president of the Washington, D.C. regional chapter of Les Dames d'Escoffier. She is also a well-known food writer around town. One of the most innovative women in food and beverage, according to Fortune and Food magazines, and a return industry night guest, Katherine Miller, deputy CEO. I need to know how this title came about, of Sunnyside Restaurant Group. You know me, the pizza, Good Stuff Eatery, etc. Micheline Mendolsohn. What else does this woman do? She does a lot. And Chef Danielle Turner. She is a chef and a CEO of Forklift Media. She produces high-quality culinary content for digital and print media. Now, you might be like, okay, Nick, why did you bring all these women together? Well, they are all members of Les Dames d'Escoffier, which is this incredible women's organization, not just here in this city. There was like 29 chapters, but apparently the website needs to be updated. There's a lot more chapters. So I'm going to let Lori join us first, Lori Gardner, because you're the president, Madam President. I feel like we should be saying that about other people, but anyway. Tell us, please, about Les Dames, because I want to say for the record, I am not in Les Dames. I am Les Dames adjacent. I love Les Dames. My tush just isn't in it, but I do love it. I'm adjacent. Okay, so to that point,
Okay.
Tell us about Les Dames, please.
Sure. We're an international organization, 42 chapters across the world, about 3,200 members.
Wow.
The DC chapter is the second Les Dames chapter in the country, so New York was first in about 1975, and DC chapter was born in 1981. We're currently the third largest chapter in the country with just about close to 200 people.
Wow. And what's the mission? What was the mission in 1975, and now how has it evolved over the years?
So I think the mission has basically stayed the same. It is a philanthropic organization to support women in food, beverage, hospitality through scholarships that we provide to women undergoing who want to enter culinary school or get an education in culinary. We give grants to organizations that are nonprofit in the area that address issues having to do with food, feeding children, sustainability, things like that. Mentorship is certainly a goal, and networking and education. And I think one of the big things that we know is just the connections that we make give us a lot of the benefit and the value. So all these wonderful women we have all met, or I've met all of you through the organization, just forming these connections has been extremely valuable to the members so we're really growing. DC we have right now about 40 women who are hoping to join the organization this year, so that's really amazing. We're really excited about that. So it's just growing, lots of educational opportunities. We have a program coming up we'll talk about.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there.
Yeah.
Okay, so for people who don't know, other than being president, because I want everybody to sort of introduce themselves, other than my amazing introduction, and sort of tell us what you do in hospitality, which then brought you to Les Dames.
Okay, so I started a restaurant review blog called Been There, Eaten That back in 2011. And then I was also doing some writing for Jewish Food Experience.
You interviewed me?
I think you might have been my first table, actually. I was thinking that on the way here. You might have been my first. And those were really fun. And so I was just writing about restaurants, and I was attending Les Dames events as someone interested in food. And I thought, wow, I don't know if I have what it takes to be in this organization. It was,
you're president.
I don't know. At the time, it was a very exclusive organization. And so you had to apply, you had to be nominated, you had to be voted in.
Is that no longer the case?
So we have become more inclusive rather than exclusive.
Okay.
So yes, there's still a whole process, but we want to be more inclusive. And there's so many women who want to be part and should be part of this organization that we really have grown. So
Okay.
I came, go ahead.
I'm going to move on to Catherine.
Okay.
I know you had a lot to say. Catherine, tell us just a little bit. You've been on the show before. You had a fabulous book that we were able to really dig down deep on. Talk about just a little bit about what you're doing these days and just sort of when you joined Les Dames.
I've been a member of Les Dames for about 6 years or so now, and like any other organization, this is one of those things that people tell you, you'll get as much out of it as you put into it, right? And so one of the things that's been so great, I work with a lot of philanthropic organizations, nonprofit organizations, is to see the amount of energy that women put into this organization, whether it's here in the DC chapter or nationally, and in part because they want people to avoid the experiences that sounds like you had or I had with bad women mentor or no women mentor, right?
I don't say bad women mentors. Women mentors. I just want to say that there was people who are not always shown kindness do not always give kindness. And I just think for her, she was not shown kindness, and she wasn't unkind to me, but she was like, I'm just not doing it for you.
Yeah, no, and I think that was a lot of what a lot of us experience, right? And sort of find organizations, whether it's here in DC and Les Dames, whether it's nationally with Les Dames, whether it's the networks that form through groups like Regarding Her or Sister Philadelphia, Sister Love Philadelphia, right? Whether it's
That is Ellen Yun's organization.
That is Ellen Yun's organization that she founded, yes. But, you know, whether it's FAB in Charleston, a conference, whether it's MAP, which is focused on advocacy, like we are really seeing women take charge of creating their own girls' network or women's network to help people advance their own careers, find access to information that we didn't have before, right? It's some of the things that I work on with a lot of my projects and clients is like people who don't know how to negotiate a lease.
Right.
People who don't
You're jumping ahead.
Oh, sorry. I'm jumping ahead.
You're jumping ahead.
But so like those types of things, I think that Danielle and Micheline also are really great at talking about. Those types of things are the reason that organizations like Les Dames are so important, and particularly for women just starting out, right?
With you.
Yeah.
Chef Danielle Turner.
Yes.
So you and I don't have a past. You're the only one here that doesn't. So can you tell us, please, a little bit about how you went from being a chef to being into media and sort of what your business is and
Sure.
how Les Dames relates to that?
So my first interaction, a recognition of Les Dames, when I was in culinary school. This was a second career for me. I'd worked in politics for 10 years, like everybody in DC, and said, no more. And went to culinary school. I followed Amy Brandwine, who is my friend. We worked together at Emily's List back in the 90s. But I'm at school at l'Académie de Cuisine. Patrice Diano, love her, came and was like, fill out this application for a scholarship. And I'm like, okay. And it was from Les Dames d'Escoffier. And I got that money, and it helped me pay for, it helped me pay for my,
You're a beneficiary.
I was, so it works. Look at what you can produce. So when I think about my career, always an all-purpose cleaner. Like, I've done a little bit of everything.
I love that.
I could teach a master class on like reinventing yourself. Like, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I've been a solopreneur for the past 20 plus years. And so what I love about Les Dames is that even though I'm working alone almost constantly, there's always someone I can reach out to. If I have a question about something, if I'm interested in doing something new and I don't know anything about it, there's someone in our membership. Exactly.
And Micheline, what about you? Because your entryway into this business is really interesting.
Yeah, it's also through politics. And then we run a family-run restaurant group with my brother Spike, my younger brother, and then my parents as well, which is why I'm deputy CEO.
Okay.
So it doesn't go to Spike, it's my father who's CEO.
It's still a very fancy title.
Yes,
it's a very fancy title.
Spike decided to go on TV, and I was working in politics at the time, and my parents wanted to open up a restaurant in DC, and we kind of all came together and said, okay, let's dedicate 4 years to each other and get this restaurant open. And then, of course, it's 18 years later, and I've never left. Yeah. So we run We the Pizza, Good Stuff Eatery in Santa Rosa, Tuckery in the city, and then we have some franchises across the country, and then 3 stores overseas.
Okay, well that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And at what point did Les Dames show up in your life?
Through Katherine Miller, actually. So 5 years ago, Katherine sent me an email saying exactly what she just said. Join this organization, you're going to get as much as you put into it. And I did, and I have. It's been an amazing organization for me because there's something really great about talking to other women that are in the same circumstance as you. So people that have gone through it, people that are in it, and then there's really something gratifying about being able to give advice, right, to the women that are about to go through what you just went through.
Well, I think that's
So it hits on all.
It's a really good place to start. Let's just quickly talk about, the woman experience in the hospitality industry where everybody's at a different point. Maybe more for Micheline and Danielle. Like, what was your experience? What were the roadblocks for you?
So, for me, it's totally different, I'm sure, than Danielle, because I had a lovely experience. My mother, right, had been in the industry forever, and she's a complete badass in every aspect and commands every room that she walks into. So that was where I was coming from when I entered it. And my father is a huge supporter of women and us and having more women on, in the executive team. So my view is skewed a little bit. So for me, I had a great experience now that was within the family, right? So then once when you go out, you kind of realize it's not as rosy as you think, right? And it's more difficult. And, there is something to being heard in a room, and your opinion matters as much as the next person, and that's not necessarily the case always when you're dealing with chefs, I guess, in general, or male executives, let's say.
So
Right? Yeah.
Right. I mean, this isn't a male bashing candidate.
Not at all. No.
At all, because we do have allies out there.
Oh, and I've been a beneficiary of so many,
Me as well.
male friends that have supported me, come out to, the restaurant openings and are always ready to give me advice. I mean, I have a slew of network, but it's just a little bit different when you talk to women.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And Danielle, what about for you?
My first restaurant experience was in culinary school. We had to do an externship and go work in a restaurant for 960 hours. And
Okay.
I remember that because that's exactly how long I was there before I filled it out. And I worked at a larger restaurant that's no more. It was on Capitol Hill, and there were about 25 people on staff, and there was one woman, and then me, and it was let her make the dessert. So it was just learning how to stand up for myself and say, no, I'm going to do this, but I also I can do other things. And if I have to nudge you gently into allowing me to do that so I can learn more, then I will. But I think the expectation was just, and I'm sure part of that was being a student too, was just kind of, you just do whatever we say and be glad with that. And so if you're not of a personality where you are familiar with shutting that nonsense down. I can see where it may be one of the reasons why women are not so always interested in thinking of that as a career.
Well, we're accommodating people.
Yes.
As a gender.
And be polite, and you have to not be polite.
You know, nobody wants to be called a bitch.
Yeah.
And when you're younger, you also don't want to lose the opportunity,
Right.
right? That's the nice thing of age, is that you can lose the opportunity and be okay with it.
Actually, I think the nice thing about age is that, well, you lose the fear.
Mhm.
I guess it's really the fear. And I think when you're younger, although I spoke with a woman who's also in the industry the other day, and she is just full of fear.
Mhm.
She's fearful of showing her worth financially, giving the number.
Yeah.
And I think that's it, because it's to all men. And I was like, if you can't go less, you have to give the number. And if they say no, her point of view, she's like, but I need this money. And I was like, they're either giving it to you or they're not. Whether or not the number is right or wrong.
Right.
You know? Go ahead, Catherine.
No, I mean, I think what's really interesting at this time for a lot of folks, and particularly even young women, is flipping that switch from thinking about fear to power, right? And what is really nice at this moment is there are a lot of women that are willing to lend their power to other women, right? And so it's not a male bashing thing, but it is an acknowledgement. I mean, we are being interviewed by a female moderator in a woman-owned restaurant with a woman GM, right? And that is a conscious choice, right? There's a fabulous male chef back there. He's great. Food's delicious, right? But like those positions of authority and our willingness to say, hey, no, we want to work with a women-owned PR firm. Or we want to work with a person of color owned marketing agency, or we want, like, those are very conscious decisions that we all have the power to make. And what's been really nice at this moment is all of these women aligned organizations advancing women in the industry are also places where we can find those people. It is no longer acceptable for somebody to be like, oh, I don't know who the woman som is. Or I don't know who the woman bartender is, or the mixologist, right? Because guess what? Like we have them, and they're visible, and they're supportive of one another in a way that men used to, right?
Right.
And so like that is, I think that for me is like the reframe, and we've all been there. We've all been operating from positions of fear of like, are we going to get this contract, or is my boss going to give me this negotiation? And so I don't dismiss that. But I would want any woman in this industry to know that there's a whole community of women that are willing to loan a little bit of their power to them to help them make better choices, easier choices, lift them up.
Well, I go back to what I said earlier, a brain trust, right?
Yeah.
So knowing that you have other women in the industry, like women who are in LDEDC, if you're doing this networking and you're meeting each other, you could call up somebody, like this woman called me and said, am I off base? And I was like, no, right,
Exactly.
that number is accurate. And if they don't pay it, then they're not paying you anyway. I mean, you know, we all live in that moment of like, I need the money, and I get it, but they're not giving it to you, or they are giving it to you. It's one way or the other.
And I think also the interesting thing about that is that it's not just for work, right? Like that's what's so great about LDEDC is that the way we get together, it is because of work, but then we're all getting advice about kids or vacations or, you know, a million other
Where to
things.
eat.
Yeah, about the women experience, right? So like that's what's great about it too, I think.
I think,
Go ahead, Lori, I was gonna go to you, go ahead.
no, one thing I think that is really special about LDEDC is we have the chefs, the restaurant owners, authors, publishers, nutritionists, so people who come from all different aspects of the industry, who have something to bring to each other, even if it's not exactly the same thing that they do, but they can bring a piece of wisdom from their experience that can help someone else, just by getting together, just by being in the same room. And I think that's a really unique aspect of the organization.
Well, I do too. Not to mention you guys do events throughout the year. There's a big symposium that it's next week, so this show will be out afterwards. But can we talk about the symposium and sort of what's the point? I mean, I'm leading a panel. because that's what I do. And I don't have Carla Hall here with me today, just so you know, because I also emceed their gala with Carla Hall, and that was such a trip. You always want Carla Hall to be your sidekick.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the symposium, because the topics are really broad and different. You know, you have like kind of conversations about what we're having here today, and then you have like bread making. Like, can we talk about sort of the agenda for the day?
The broadness is based off the diversity of the membership and also the broad interests of DC, right? Because I think the other thing is as much as we want to think about, as much as we operate from Les Dames as an organization, part of our mission is actually out into the city, right? Partnering with other organizations, nonprofit organizations, grants. And so, the symposium will include people from outside of the organization. And so part of it is just a recognition of what people want today, right? Like, I am a businesswoman, so I want business advice, but I'm also very interested in like what healthier movements will mean to my grocery bills and my own gut health and those kind of things. So it's a broad agenda, but it's meant to sort of tantalize you a little bit about the different ways that you can show up and the different types of information that you can get in food. And it's also like, I'm super excited about the women of Les Dames who are bringing that content to life, right? So Daniela Senor from Colada Shop, or Joanna Heigl from AMA, or right, like, are some of the chefs. We were thinking about Jody Tick and Sunflower Bakery, who's doing inclusive jobs, right? Like the training of people who are maybe outside the workforce in other environments. And so, the agenda is broad because our interest as women and interest as consumers in DC is broad, but it's also to give you a taste of what is possible with food, everything from advocacy to bread baking.
Right. Well, I'm sort of interested about advocacy and what that looks like today and how you all are engaged in it. Chef Danielle, is that a component that you're in? I mean, as a scholarship receiver of Les Dames, I mean, I just love that it's so full circle. How do you become a mentor? How do you participate in it?
Well, I think as members, we have lots of opportunities. There's always an activity going on. And a lot of those are fundraisers or things we're asking people to pay. A lot of those are free, and a lot of those are DOMs giving back in some way. So whether we're volunteering at DC Central Kitchen or doing any number of things, there's always an opportunity to find some meaningful way. I got an email this week from another member saying, oh, I'm working with a student and she has questions about whatever, and I know that you've done that. Can she call me? Absolutely. So there's a formal mentorship program, and then there's informal ways like that you can get involved.
Amazing. Lori, what about advocacy? What does that mean? Like, how do you guys fundraise for your scholarships? How are they getting? Can we get a little behind on that?
Yeah, so those are two separate things. So in terms of advocacy, it's not really part of our mission, so it's probably mission adjacent. We covered it in 2023 at our symposium. We had a great session on policy. We're working with the MAP. I know Catherine's involved.
She's been on the show.
And so they're going to be speaking. Joanna James is going to be speaking at symposium. So we have a partnership. That's probably not the main piece of our mission. In terms of where we give our money, so the scholarships are through, right now, primarily through CIA. So we fund at least several people a year, and we want to keep track of them and where are they, try to get them back into the organization, hoping they stay local. And then I mentioned the grants. So like the gala that you were part of last year was a huge moneymaker for us.
It was insane.
And so that's going to help us increase what we can do for grants and scholarships. So more of that. We also have members that get requests.
I also think by doing that and providing the scholarships and the grants, that's also a form of advocacy.
Yes.
It's not just about politics, because we're advocating for people to have a voice who don't have a voice. We're advocating for people to have better access to food and hospitality services that they need.
Well, it's really it's so much harder for women to break into the industry, especially in leadership roles. So any sort of guidance or leg up, whether it's through scholarship or mentorship, is incredibly helpful. Micheline, I'm sort of curious, given your role in sort of as an executive in the hospitality industry, how do you work with young women or new women? Like, you know, Chef Danielle's like, I came late, did it differently.
Yeah, it's really great. You know, we're all part of the kind of this great list of people, and I often get emails from women that are up and coming in business asking me questions. I actually just had somebody at the restaurant last week. It's a woman from Sweet Almond, and she's trying to become a member of Les Dames. But so she came to ask for advice just about her business and what I thought of Les Dames and how helpful it was and all of this. But the interesting part for me is, you know, so many women have these great ideas and they start them and then they just need some help along the way. And it's so great to be able to be part of an organization that offers the help at every stage, because you have women that are just starting out, you have people that are in the middle of it, then you have people that are at the end of it that can look back and say, this is what I did right or wrong, or this is how you should look at a lease, or this is how you should do your marketing, you know. And that to me is the most helpful part. So I do a lot of work with women through MAP and Already Her and Les Dames that are kind of just starting out in the industry, or some that have had, you know, a restaurant and want to expand. Since we franchise, I get a lot of calls about, you know, how did you duplicate it and where and why. And by the way, we didn't do it right all the time. We've done it wrong plenty of times. So it's kind of nice to be able to say, oh, don't do this because we did it and it was a really bad idea.
I mean, I think that's the beauty of it, right?
100%.
Why make people recreate the wheel over and over and over again? And I mean, listen, times, you know, marketing obviously today is totally different than it was 20 years ago. You know, lease signing today, everything is different. But you can still learn, those are foundations that you can still learn from.
Yes.
So I think it's a real priority. I just want to sort of say, like, with everything Les Dames does, I'd love to sort of end the panel on just sort of a positive note, if we can, about the future of women in the hospitality industry. Maybe, since we can't crystal ball it, but maybe sort of a wish list of what you're each looking forward to. Lori, I'd love to start with you.
I am looking forward to continuing to grow the membership with some dynamic new women that we're talking to about coming on board and engaging them in the work that we do. A lot of them are looking for a community. And I think many of us have talked about what's going on in the world right now and how important our own communities are. And so I feel like this is a place where we can be together, collaborate, and just find community.
That's a good point. Catherine?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that is giving me the most hope at this point, besides a really great and active community, is the number of women who are willing to talk to, meet with, give their own experience, give up a little bit of that power, give a little bit of that access over to other women. Because we still see record numbers of women in culinary school, things like franchising in local and regional markets, and they don't have a playbook. And so, but all of that growth gives me hope, and everybody's willingness to support them and help them gives me hope.
Cool. I am just going to continue what they're saying. I'm just looking for more women everywhere, more women in leadership positions, more women as solopreneurs. I just saw a study that said that companies that have a higher percentage of women in their management typically earn 15%, I think, more than the average for their industry. What is bad about that? So yeah, I just look for a day where we're not the only woman in the room.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I second what everybody said. I can say that being the last person, but I also think, you know, I want to touch what Catherine said. There's this idea, and we all kind of had those jobs where the women before us didn't really help as much as we wanted, and so I feel like we are
maybe
now.
we didn't even know what to ask. If you don't mind my
Yeah, it could be.
You know,
It could be. But now we have to ask.
But I do think there is this philosophy of I did it the hard way, so do you, right? And I think with our generation, having gone through that, we're like, but you don't have to, right?
And I'm just going to say
Yeah.
for that generation,
Yeah.
like to be fair, I mean, I'm a Gen Xer,
Yeah.
and my boss was a boomer, right? So she did kick down doors.
Yeah.
You know, she was a generation of women who
Of
went to the
course.
workforce where women were nothing more than
Right.
secretaries.
Right.
And so I give her the credit for what she did, but I didn't understand why she thought making it easier for others or giving room for more, you know, I'm going to interrupt myself. Katie Couric has a great line where she talks about the fact that she did not try to bring more women up with her because there was only one woman allowed.
Right, there was only one.
Right? So if
right.
there was only one,
Right, it
it's
had to
going
be
to be
her.
her.
Yes.
And I think what our generation is sort of saying is, yeah, why is there only one?
Right, there could be more.
We could have lots.
Yes.
It's great to kick down a door, but it's also great to not put the door back up when you come through it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
We all came from politics, and Donna Brazil, that is a great line that I think she stole from Shirley Chisholm, which was like, you bring the chair and put it next to you.
Yes,
Oh, I love that.
Right?
It's a
So
great-
like,
Yeah.
like you might have the chair at the table, but it's your job to bring a folding chair and put it right next to you.
But I think like we as women now have that philosophy, right? So my example is I was on a call last week for Black women in food. And there were 3 different women. There was a PR person, there was myself, there were the 2 founders of the organization, and they needed help with media. And it just became this media dump of contacts. Like, oh, you need help? Okay, here's the contact. 20 years ago, that would have never happened, right? Women were so like, I have the media contact, and I have that, and nobody else can have that. And this just became this beautiful thing of like, here's my entire contact list. Like, pick who you need.
How can I
right?
help you?
How can I help
Yes.
you? And I think that's so important. And I think that's where it's kind of moving.
Well, I think this is a great place to end it at. I thank you all for your time today. I know how valuable it is. I cannot wait for the symposium. It's going to be an incredible day of events. And I just want to thank you all. For,
Thank
I think
you.
the
Thank you.
together
Yeah.
today was really important.
Produced by Heartcast Media.